Hiram Berdan was a 19th century American mechanical engineer, battlefield tactician, and Union officer, considered by some to be the best marksman of that time. During the American Civil War, Colonel Berdan developed a method of low-cost brass development. Following the resignation of his commission in June 1864, the then Brevet Major General continued to devote much of his time to developing a self-contained metallic cartridge and primer for his system of converting rifle muzzle-loading weapons to breech loaders. His primer design didn't have an internal anvil which Colonel Edward Monte Boxer's 1866 design had. Rather, the anvil was formed upside down in the primer pocket of the case's base, with 2 or 3 small flash holes. Noticing the success of Berdan's revolutionary innovations being copied going forward in America, the Russian Empire contracted with Berdan to modernize their fielded weapons and munitions. In 1868, Russia adopted the Brevet General's new patented cartridge, the 43 Russian, or 1075x58Rmm Russian Berdan, and his rifle conversion system for the Krnka Model 1869 rifles. Further arms were then manufactured by both Colt Arms and Russia's Tula Arsenal. Hiram Berdan's 43 Russian is considered a pioneer in design and the development of self-contained metallic cartridges, as it was the first produced military cartridge of the world with an outside centerfire primer. Large quantities of these then innovative cartridges were rolled by Remington and Winchester for the Russian Empire. The 43 Russian was primarily a military cartridge and was not used to any great extent for civilian sport shooting purposes. The cartridge is a rimmed bottleneck case which holds a .4300 diameter 370 grain bullet wrapped with a lubricated white paper patch. Quite a stark difference in appearance to modern cartridges today. Powder charge varies by different weight paper patch bullets used for the cartridge. The standard gunpowder charge for a white paper patch military rifle cartridge is 77 grains. Propelled by gunpowder, the heavy 370 grain bullet achieved 1,433 feet per second. During its time, the cartridge was effective enough to stop enemy soldiers as far as 300 yards. Winter-type and summer-type cartridges were manufactured for the Russian troops. This was later standardized to a tallow-cut mixture for all cartridges during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-78, when it was discovered that the winter cartridge wax could melt in hot weather and ruin the cartridge gunpowder charge. The war only lasted 10 months, and while the Turks had several advantages in terms of weapon technology, the Russians were much more experienced fighters on the battlefield, emerging victorious by the conclusion of the war. In 1886, France destabilized the balance of international power overnight with the introduction of the 8x50 rimmed mm Lebel. The introduction of the small-bore 8mm Lebel with a smokeless powder charge made gunpowder cartridges immediately obsolete, producing a greatly less noticeable translucent cloud rather than the obscenely noticeable white cloud produced at the end of a muzzle from the cartridge charged with gunpowder. With the advent of smokeless powder, government arsenals and private companies shifted from the manufacturing of large bore calibers to smaller caliber cartridges for their militaries. What remained for the production of these new diverse cartridges was Berdan's primer design. Tactics were unfortunately slow to follow as more and more weapons capable of longer range, chambered with less fouling cartridges, filled the hands of soldiers around the world as the 19th century came to a close. In response to the arms race phenomenon taking place throughout Europe, trials for a modern standard-issue longarm capable of firing a smokeless charged cartridge commenced in Russia in 1889. With a long history of the use of military officers as lead designers for their weapons development, 3 examples were presented to the Commission for their consideration. Without no clear choice for the Commission's consideration of a Russian weapon going forward into the 20th century, politics and simplicity won out. In 1891, the 43 Russian Berdan, which bears the name synonymous with accuracy, was replaced with Mosin's 3-line cartridge, chambered in the model 1891 and subsequent variant Mosin-Nagant rifles for all Cossack forces. Berdan's primer for the Cossacks' new cartridge remained. The 7.62x54 Russian would continue its service well past the fall of the Russian Empire to the Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917. Throughout the mid-20th century, it would serve communist forces the world over. From the Soviet Union to China and Southeast Asia, the cartridge would continue to be chambered in the Mosin-Nagant and copies shouldered by communist forces and social partisans. Though Berdan's original cartridge is no longer available, becoming a footnote in the annals of the development of cartridges, his main priming design continues to this day. As most commercial and military cartridges use Colonel Boxer's primer, Berdan's centerfire primer continues, coexisting with the Boxer primer to serve both militaries and civilian shooters throughout the world.